Okay, so when we need to, we have a resolution that I'm going to have Mrs. Fulton read into, and then we will make a motion. Well, that'll be the motion, and then we'll second it. Ms. Fulton.
Resolution, Louisville Independent School District, February 14th, 2011. Whereas it is the goal of the Louisville Independent School District, the district, to maintain optimal balance regarding program, operational, and financial integrity, including the implementation of future years' financial planning, that 1, targets the maintenance of a minimum district general fund balance of at least $45 million, and 2, honors all legal requirements and obligations. And whereas the district's financial planning goals include 1, maximizing its financial position within the current legal parameters of the state's finance model while continuing to increase student success, and 2, reviewing all cost reductions and reallocations on a periodic basis with the intent of alignment to board goals and priorities for upcoming years. And whereas the Board of Trustees and district administration during the past several years have shown fiscal responsibility by enacting budget reductions totaling approximately $8,967,889. And whereas for the 2009-2010 fiscal year, the Board of Trustees and District Administration continued to show fiscal responsibility by enacting additional budget reductions in the approximate amount of $12,582,823. And whereas the district's budget process, as currently constructed, including budget reductions, involves multi-year assessment, planning, and implementation. And whereas current projected revenues and costs for the district results in an estimate of yearly and continuing deficit budgets for the district through at least the fiscal year 2014-2015, which projected deficits would reduce the district's general fund balance to an unacceptable level. And whereas the current estimated state of Texas budget shortfall in the range of $15 to $25 billion has raised the possibility that the future application of the state education finance system as to the district will result in decreased state funding, which in turn would increase the likelihood for even higher district projected budget deficits and a more rapidly decreasing general fund balance. And whereas, in order to address the district's financial planning goals set out above in a manner that is in the best interest of the district, the Board of Trustees of the Louisville Independent School District does hereby authorize and direct the district's administration to implement financial planning and cost reduction measures. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the Louisville Independent School District, the Board of Trustees and District Administration will develop and implement a financial plan to address the district's goals, and that will attempt to provide the resources necessary to offer quality educational opportunities for all students, a competitive compensation package to district employees, necessary maintenance of existing facilities, and necessary funds to central departments and campuses. The Board of Trustees and District Administration will use financial forecasting to determine the impact of current decisions on subsequent years to ensure the public that short-term financial decisions are made only after consideration of long-term consequences and to protect the district's general fund balance. In collaboration with the Board of Trustees, the superintendent and administration designees will take appropriate action toward reaching a targeted goal of budget reductions for the fiscal year 2011-12 in the approximate amount of $10.6 million. For the fiscal years 2010-11 and 2011-12, the district superintendent and/or administration designees will review and authorize all appropriate personnel postings and employment positions with the goal to reduce personnel costs for those fiscal years. The Board of Trustees and District Administration, to the extent possible, will implement personnel budget reductions through the process of attrition, in which selected vacated positions as the result of retirement, resignation, or other employment separations will not be filled with newly hired personnel. In order to enact personnel budget reductions and subject to district policy and law, the superintendent and/or administration designees will assign and reassign staff as appropriate, including filling vacant positions as the result of attrition with currently employed personnel. Personnel who are under consideration for reassignment must still satisfy any necessary requirements for a position, including but not limited to certification, training, qualifications, and district policies, as well as meet the No Child Left Behind standard of highly qualified. In response to changes in conditions but subject to district policy and the law, the superintendent and administration designees are authorized to propose amendments to the approved district budget when necessary for the remainder of the 2010-11 fiscal year and for future fiscal years' budget reduction targets. However, the current goal to make budget cuts of approximately $10.6 million for the 2011-12 fiscal year will remain constant unless and until altered by subsequent action by the district's Board of Trustees. The proposed budget reduction outcome goals are: 1, to maintain employment for all current district staff by reducing positions and transferring employees into vacancies as they occur, prior to fiscal year 2011-12, and 2, for consideration by the Board of Trustees of possible employee salary increases in the fiscal year of 2011-12. All such proposed reduction outcomes are contingent upon the upcoming session action by the Texas Legislature. Nothing in this resolution is intended nor shall be construed to provide any additional rights to employees of the district that are beyond those rights that are already provided to the district's employees by law or contract. Further, nothing in this resolution shall be construed as a limitation, restriction, or other impediment to the district's use of any other budget reduction measures that are permitted by law or district policy. Passed, approved, and adopted by the Board of Trustees of Louisville Independent School District this 14th day of February, 2011.
Okay, that was read in motion by Ms. Fulton. I need a second. Mr. Ferguson? Okay, let's start with the discussion. Ms. Fulton, would you like to speak to your motion?
I have no voice. My discussion is probably going to be clarification questions that I have. As I understand it, through this resolution, the board is not relinquishing any right to approve the final budget. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And we anticipate going forward that identified budget cuts that equal approximately $10.6 million will be identified and steps taken toward that measure, but the budget itself will still be approved when it is normally approved. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then I want to hear from my colleagues here, but I don't know what else we can do except to begin to address the magnitude of this situation. So I'll hold comments until I hear from everybody else.
Ms. Kyer, sorry, it's kind of hard to breathe. But anyway, all budgets have to be approved by the board. Any budget changes have to be approved by the board. And let's clarify that with the audience, the difference between budget and spending. The board authorizes the administration to spend money. You don't have to spend all of it. You can save money this current fiscal year by not holding positions and so forth, correct?
Exactly right, Mr. Ferguson. In fact, we've already done that. We've had positions come open and we've moved people around. We've not filled those. So some people are not thrilled about that. And one thing I should have added too, you guys, you have a new superintendent come on board. This is just beginning of, he's going to look at all of this. You're going to have subsequent meetings going through this. We just need to have a place to start. And if we begin looking at people, we need to authorize, Dr. Haynes and Human Resources, people tell them that there are going to be changes. Our belief in this was that, there may be some discomfort, but discomfort's better than unemployment.
Right.
And that's our goal at this point. And I honestly, to be perfectly frank with you and honest, I don't know that long term, how long that can be maintained, but I think it's our obligation. These people who've given so much of themselves and worked so hard and made such great contribution to the district. That's where we start. May not be where we end, but it sure isn't.
But nothing in this delegates any budget cutting authority per se to the administration. What we're asking for is we're setting a target and saying we want the administration to recommend the 10.6 million cuts for the 2011-2012 school year. Obviously, there'll be public hearing and all the normal budget process prior to the board approving a budget. Also, any budget changes for the current fiscal year would have to be approved by the board in a regularly scheduled meeting. It would be in the board agenda to budget authorization change.
That's exactly right. In fact, what we're really talking about with this is that to get this process of making these moves and moving from there. And there are some reductions in services involved in this. We talk about those teachers on special assignments and counseling assignments, some more administrative positions, and we've already locked in. That going forward, my guess is that essential office positions occur and that none of those will be filled. You just have to see what you can do to absorb that, to take as much of this thing out as you can just by absorbing those things. And so essentially what happens is the next budget that will come to you will reflect those changes. Okay? So the cuts that have been made to the budget is just the fact that we've said we're not going to spend that money, just as you said.
One other point, our current annual budget is about 500 million, I believe, for M&O. I'm looking at Becky and or Teresa. It's in the right neighborhood, like it might be 490 or something.
About 410.
What's that?
110 million.
410?
General fund only.
Okay, M&O, okay, I was confused. Okay, so the 75 million cut that's possibly coming is M&O. And so the magnitude of that changes for, you guys, when we do the math real quick, it's almost a 20%.
Well, it's add that 15 to it.
On top of that.
$90 million.
Right, on top
So
of it.
It's, you know, I heard numerous superintendents, and when I was watching the replays, the archives of the conferences and that in Austin, and superintendent after superintendent told them they can't do it. They just can't make that work. They can't, you know, John Folks said he'd have to cut 2,000 positions. You know, and we heard, our friend Alan King, I talked to him before they announced what their cuts would have to be. He said he didn't think he'd last as long as I did now. Because he was talking about the fact that they're talking around 4,000 employees. And, you know, as we're sitting here, what we're saying to people is, we're not talking about people yet. We've not gotten to that point, you know. And maybe you get there, I don't know, but I think you start. We get down this because I think you have to at least fill in the blanks. Okay? And you don't fill in the blanks till you find out what the legislature's going to do. So maybe you make this first year, and then you find out that all of this heartache and this draconian mess has to happen. Okay, but I'm hopeful that we don't do that. We don't impact people's lives that way in an absence of information.
Mrs. Gregg?
I'm an optimist until it's time to be a realist. And I really am still holding out that it's not going to be as bad as we think. I know it's going to be bad, but I think we're going to get through this. When the retirees, how many do you, we really don't know until about when, the number that might possibly be retiring. Dr. Haynes, any idea? Crystal ball?
Typically, we know when we're going to have our retiree list, it's usually mid-April because we have to start ordering everything for the banquets. It's usually right around that time. First part of April to mid-April, we'll usually get a firm number of retirees.
You don't have a ballpark figure?
Let me piggyback that for you. And it's not just retirees. What happens is we're talking about people who leave. They leave because they've decided to stay home with children or whatever. And Linda, I think we can speak to that. Even in kind of down years, we've still been, what, 300 plus? Yeah. So, we're talking about a significant number. That's one of the things that gives me some cause for optimism is the fact that we have that amount of turnover because of our size.
Right.
Now, the things that the state talking about at this point. In fact, Florence Shapiro filed a bill that would allow a change in when you had to notify teachers, probationary teachers,
right,
before you, that you weren't going to renew those folks. Or there was talk about what they could do to reduce salaries. There are a number of pieces out there that districts will resort to. I think you'll see districts maybe reduce the contribution towards health insurance, across the board, because I think people would rather see some of these things. Nobody wants to give up money or wants to give up benefits, but the employees out there, just got to raise your hand and say anything. Would you rather give up a little bit of that or see people lose their job? They're ready for a little takeaway. Okay. That's a scientific poll.
My other concern is that we're looking at opening a new school. And I know you say there are no sacred cows. But I saw Abbott up here tonight, and that to me is pretty sacred. Those kids, they are doing so well. They have been left behind for so many years. We are finally going in the right direction. I want to make sure that those kids can continue to go in that direction, and I want to make sure that we can provide the staff that is necessary on those campuses. We're splitting here, there, and everywhere. Will Abbott be everywhere properly staffed? Because to me, that is a wonderful program. We see the success that it has generated, I don't want it to stop right now. And so there are some things that we do have to take a good look at. So that when we are looking at cuts and all this in between here, you can read between the lines, but I can't understand exactly, special assignment and all this. I just want to make sure when we are doing the cuts that we're looking at certain things, because those kids in the middle and those kids below should not be left out.
I couldn't agree with you more. Unfortunately, the problem you have is, is that you want the surgeon to take off your left leg or your right. And that's kind of the situation you may be in as we look at other programs. Our acceleration program's done great things for us. Our night high school's been a great program for us. Our teachers on special assignment have done great things for us. All of these things were programs that we added, and people are doing great work in the district. The problem that you're going to face is that you can't take out this scenario that I put up there, 30 million. We just hope it's that good. If it turns that we'll be very pleased about that. So that means you got to get $45 million out. Tough.
Another thing is that we heard UEA recommend that you write your legislators, or they're going to have a campaign. I urge everyone, write your legislators. Just send them a little note. Let them know. Don't make, they should make public education a priority without charters and without facilities for charter schools. Because when I'm reading the fine print, that's what I'm seeing. They're looking to try to find some money to fund some charter school facilities. We have to voice our opinions and let them know public schools should be our top priority.
Thank you, Ms. Gregg. Ms. Bowden?
Just to clarify then, Dr. White, this resolution is basically saying we are going to cut 10.6 million, and then the rest of whatever deficit remains is coming from fund balance.
And again, because we're trying to do this through attrition and reassignment and that, it may be difficult to get to $10 million. Don't know how well that's going to play out. And that may not be aggressive enough. But at least until you know, I'm just saying, until the legislature, the thing about the second year of the biennium, you know what the numbers are. Okay? And then you know what you have to deal with, and you know how bad it's got to be. On the front end, I also think that we know that we're not going to come out of this unscathed. Okay? We know that it's going to be somewhere between, the best case, Smoking Casey gives 54 million, the worst case is 75 million. I don't think it'll be that bad for the reasons that I mentioned a while ago. But I don't have a real clue exactly where it'll be. I don't think anyone does. It's kind of up in the air. I think that they're going to hear from a lot of people. But they're also going to hear from people about prisons and about health care, and they're going to hear about all of these other things, and highways, and everything you can think of, and everybody gets beat up with it. They were down there, they talked to the folks from UNT for 3 hours today about higher ed money and that too. So everybody, is trying to take their turn at the trough.
So at 10.6 million, we are starting. It's a starting point. But as a board, we are giving direction, because many of our administrators that I'm looking at now have been saying we need direction so we can move forward with our budget. We're giving direction. Start with 10.6 million. We are not saying, as a board, I think you should cut this, and Mr. Ferguson thinks you should cut this or not cut this. We're leaving that to the administration to make a recommendation that will come to us when we have a budget workshop later this summer. Correct?
I will defer the answer to that question to your future superintendent, but I believe that the process will be in place and similar to that.
And that budget will be put together by our administration under the leadership of Dr. Waddell, correct?
That's correct.
Unless we're going to develop one between now and the 28th, I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, sorry. Okay. And I just want to note that this resolution is an effort in being transparent. The superintendent, it's my understanding, could go and cut and do these things before preparing a budget, but we wanted to bring a resolution forward to the public to, one, build an awareness of what's going on, and to explain what we're looking at as a dollar amount, correct? And then what we're looking at and using our fund balance. It can't be exact because we don't know what's coming our way from the legislature, but to try and give some examples of how we are going to begin looking at the budget, starting with this figure in the resolution.
That's true. I'd add one piece to that. It was an effort. The first thing is there were a lot of these things that we could do, just as you said. The assignment of staff is the superintendent's responsibility to do that. But what I wanted the resolution that would show the employees and the community that we're on board with this and knowing that these things are going forward. But also for our employees, I think it's an opportunity to give them some level of as much comfort as we can provide given the situation we're in, how the district is going to approach this, that we're not talking about doing, certainly at this point in time, a reduction in force, and we're not declaring financial exigencies, and that all of those other draconian things, they may come at some point, but that isn't where we start.
And I stated this in the workshop, and I'll restate, I guess, what you stated earlier, and Ms. Gray, is the direction as a board member I would give as our leaders are working on the direction that we're giving is I'd hope that we do our best not to touch classrooms or campus activities, and to again go back and first review non-campus functions. That's my one request.
One last thing. I think we owe an awful lot to Mr. King and the finance department. For several years, I've been fussing about the cuts, but we are where we are today because he was, and the staff, so fiscally responsible. And so I commend them, and we're in a lot better shape than many districts. And Dr. Roy, you can say, adios. I left you in good hands.
I would just add this. I agree with you totally on that. And, they work so hard and do such a great job. Part of this, it would have been pretty easy to pass this cup. Pay on some of these things in terms of bringing this forward. But we wanted to kind of help get the ball down the road a little bit with this, and knowing that we're a little bit behind the action some other districts have taken, but they've taken action, it appears to me, in that vacuum of information. And what we don't want to do is just like the idea of, okay, you tell all your probationary teachers, aren't they? They're pink slipped. Okay? But most districts I've seen that have done that end up hiring them back and do that. So you put all these people through all this pain, and if you end up bringing them back and doing that, so it seems to me that once you know, okay, you can do all of those horrible things after you know, just as easy as you can do them now, and then you've got the cards in your hand, and you can say, this is why we're doing this. You have to do it. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to do it now when you don't know. And what do we tell people then? Well, we cut your job, or we're doing these things, without full knowledge of what the situation is. On the other hand, the things that we're doing where people are moved, and perhaps they're not in the same job, but they make the same money, do that. And we hold on, and we hope that this thing begins to turn around. But it's not going to turn quickly. This is going to be a situation where we're going to live with a lot less money for a considerable length of time. We're just going to have to get used to that. The reality of it is no matter how badly we want it to go away, it's just not going.
Mr. Knapp.
Yeah, I got to admit, I look at this list and I've struggled with this for a while. But I guess my guidance I would offer is we need to get creative on that. And as I listen to the public speak tonight, it becomes quite obvious that you can, across the board, say you're going to cut this. Tennis as an example. But listening to the people talk this evening, it's obvious to me anyway that middle school tennis is far more important in the Louisville's feeder system than it is maybe in some of the other campuses. So we need to get creative, and I challenge you to do that when you go and looking for these budget cuts. I've come to the resolution, we need to start, we need to get started. I looked at the headlines that are up on the board. I've collected the Dallas Morning News now for a month with all Richardson, Irving, Plano, Carroll, everybody else that's in there. So far, Louisville stayed out, and I'd like to keep it that way. But I'm just asking, I challenge you, get creative when you're looking for this stuff. Think of it as one district, not a bunch of individual schools. Step out of the silo and step out of the box.
I'm gonna try to not have an epileptic shock fit or whatever it was you said I had. The first question I have is for the finance department. What is the fund balance as of 12/31/10? I noticed that the $120 million number that we're looking at in our chart is dated as of August 31st, so I was just curious. Do we have that information yet? It's February.
I'm sorry, but I don't have that with me. I can get it for you, though. You're wanting it as of December of 2010, correct?
Uh-huh.
I don't have it with me.
Do you think
Sorry.
it's more than $120,671,37?
Oh, no. I would not think it to be.
You think it's, I'm sorry?
No, I would not expect it to be more than that, no.
You don't expect that our fund balance has grown since August 31st?
We plan to spend $15 million of fund balance in this budget.
So, okay.
So, you know, so we'd have to be printing money.
Well, okay, there's something maybe our career and technology class. That's creative and out of the box. But yeah, if y'all could tell us what that is as of 12/31/2010, that would be great. Another thought that I had is with the potential cuts in state funding. Kind of agree with Ms. Gregg. I know that the media always paints the picture a little bit blacker than it really is. So I'm ready to write it out and see how bad it really is before we make any just harsh decisions. I do agree that we do need to cut some spending out of our budget. We do need to reduce that overall number. I guess where I'm a little frustrated or concerned is this is the same resolution that I looked at in December. And when asked the question, what kind of cuts are going to be implemented if this resolution is passed, the response was the same things, the same list that you saw in December. And that wasn't creative enough for me. There was too much focus on making cuts that affected directly kids, and not enough focus on areas that need to be a little more efficient and don't affect the classroom. And I do agree that we do need to work through the attrition as teachers retire, leave the district for whatever reason. We do need to look hard at those positions and before we just fill them. I think that is a great tool, and you will be able to avoid costing any jobs. But we had said in our budget workshop in December that we wanted this postponed until we had a new superintendent and we could come up with a different plan. So I'm just wondering, same plan, just different day. We all have to cut money. We have to do it at home too. If you're out below exceed your income, you got an issue. So I think I agree with Jeff. We just need to step back and get a little bit creative and maybe talk to the kids at the Career and Technology Center about printing us the money.
I do want to add one thing, and I agree that the district can move forward and take serious steps to be more efficient. But the two major studies that are out there that examine the efficiency of public schools say we're pretty damn efficient already. Okay, so I do want to put that across. So these folks worked really hard to do that, and the fact is that, you know, on the comptroller says we were 4.5 stars out of 5, and that study we didn't buy because we had to pay for it to get it, but they showed it to us in Austin. At least ISTA was looking at it and said we were all in the green, which essentially means that we were one of those districts that was operating pretty efficiently. During the course of that time, we've also managed to a massive fund balance of $120 million. We've come within 20 kids of being an exemplary district. I agree that we're going to do everything we can to be more efficient, but I don't for a moment want to take away credit from these folks for the hard work they've done, the accomplishments that they've had. Okay? And if we think that we're going to get those same levels of return as we begin paring this thing down and we take these programs away and we take these levels of support away, I got some swamp land for you, because that ain't going to happen. Okay? It may not happen the first year, but over time you will begin to see this have an impact, because those people out there are working hard and doing great work.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. Tom, did you? Well, as a board member, we're given lessons. You know, we are trained, believe it or not. We have, and we're instructed on our scope of our responsibility. The scope of our responsibility now is what we're extending right now with this resolution. And what we are telling, what we're addressing, you know, just by reading it, all the different ways that we would like the administration for the upcoming board, the upcoming fiscal year 2011-2012, we want them to cut $10.6 million. That is, our job is to give them a number, because just looking at it, this is what we want to shoot for now. There's going to be more, and we know that as soon as we get our tax roll and as soon as we get, you know, as soon as the legislature is done, we'll figure out what else we have to do. But for now, we're just saying, let's be a little proactive, which I think our school district is very good at being proactive. Let's look and see where we can get $10.6 million. And the administration does that, because it's not up to the school board to do that. It's up to us to tell the superintendent, this is what we want you to do, and this is what you need to go forward with the staff to do, and give them direction. That's our job, and that's what this is. We got a list, yes we did, and that's an example of what they think that they can do. But you know, things change. For all you know, we'll have some, you know, Billie Jean King will come in and say she'll provide our tennis program forever and ever and ever, and we don't have to worry about it. Stuff happens. You know, there's all kinds of things there's things that can happen. Funding comes all of a sudden from the federal government for something. But for now, we're looking at this and we're saying, you know, this is what we need you to do, and this is what we need to plan for, and this is where it's starting now. It's February. Unfortunately, if we're not passing a budget, we're planning a budget. This is just the way we live. So that's all I really have to say. That's the scope of our responsibilities. The big picture is our responsibility, and it's up to the superintendent and the staff to make sure that this goes forward in implementing the best way, not to harm the classrooms, not to harm activities as much as possible. That's all I have to say. Does anybody else have anything else? Everybody's spoken so far. Does anybody else have anything they want to add?
Just a question. Lynn,
yes, sir.
Voting for this doesn't say, just from the comments made, voting for this doesn't say we vote to cut tennis, we vote to cut X and Y. We're
No.
giving guidance here. They can still be creative. I just want to keep that
Right.
creativity on.
I think that's your microphone. What it's just saying is that we want you to, this is what the budget for next year, we want it to be at least $10.6 million less than it is this year.
I have a question. Why do we need a resolution for that? If we approve the final budget for 2011 and 2012, could you help me understand why we need a resolution to tell them to reduce the budget?
I'll speak to that, Ms. Latham. I think the first thing is you know, and Julie did a pretty good job speaking to what we were attempting to do with that. But to me, one of the key provisions, again, was to show the unity that we had on the board and staff, and we were going to try to approach this problem, that we had our arms around this thing together, and that this was a common effort, that we're united in that. But also for our employees, we have folks out there, they're reading the newspapers every day. They're watching and reading Texas ISD, and they know what's going on with this, and people are frightened and concerned. I wanted our employees to know what our first steps were going to be, and that the board was in support of that, how we were going to proceed with an effort to save people's jobs for as long as we possibly could, do that until the situation got much worse, and we were all united behind that. That was the goal of the resolution. And also, it clarified some things. We asked our legal counsel to help us in drafting the resolution to make sure we did these things, that we had language out there that said if we did these, that we didn't trample on anyone's employment rights or other things like that, that we had kind of covered that, and we didn't make any guarantees, I think was the language that, Bob, that you guys are most concerned about.
Well, if I might add to that, I think the language here is meant to be reassuring. For instance, item number 1 under the resolutions further reinforces that these things will be done under the umbrella of district goals, which is a board function. We collaboratively decide on board goals for the district, and that we're prioritizing that we're going to provide resources necessary for a quality educational opportunity for all students. And that attempts to establish some sort of measuring stick in my mind when we're discussing a budget cut or a program implementation or a change to this or that we have something to look back at and say we agreed as a group to use these as our guiding principles when we're going through this process, and not have to every time go, oh, what are we going to do about that? What are we going to do about that? What are we going to do about that? So in my mind, that's what this establishes, is some sort of measuring stick to weigh the decisions as we move forward, while establishing and reinforcing that we are absolutely not going to sacrifice the quality of education if at all possible. The means that we're already providing is going to be of utmost importance.
Does anybody else have anything they want to say? Are we ready for a vote? There's a motion and second on the table for the resolution. All in favor? That's Mr. Ferguson, Ms. Foudy, Ms. Kyer, Mr. Knapp, I'm getting tired, you can tell, Ms. Gregg, and Ms. Fulton in favor, and those against? Latham is against. Okay, moving on to